monitoring Northeast Nigeria's humanitarian situation. We'll see how government agencies are preparing to record and report what's happening.
With more demonstrations underway, we'll look at the role the Catholic Church plays in calling for the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Joseph Kabila to step down.
Meet Miss Marvel. She's a Muslim superhero who represents the immigrant experience in America. Africa54 starts right now.
Hello, welcome to Africa54. I'm Chamberlain Uso at Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent Makori at Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm Vincent Makori at our global headquarters in Washington, D.C. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa54. Let's start off with a look at how government agencies trained to monitor Northeast Nigeria's humanitarian situation. Chamberlain, also in Lagos, brings you that story.
Yes, the Human Rights Commission, in collaboration with the United Nations, is training government agencies in the Northeast. At a program held in Yola, participants from the Ministries of Health, Education and Justice, security agencies, among others from the 3 most affected states, received training on how to better monitor the humanitarian situation. Channels Television's correspondent Freedom Haslon compiled our report.
For thousands of internally displaced persons in Nigeria's northeast, life in camps has been nothing short of challenging. Returning to their respective communities is not a bed of roses either, as many of them return to nothing. Majority of those displaced are picking up the pieces, but the humanitarian situation remains dire in most cases, given limited resources. The National Human Rights Commission, working closely with the United Nations Human Rights Commission, is organizing a capacity-building program for ministries, departments and agencies in the Northeast. Drawing participants from the 3 most affected states of Borno, Yobe and Adamawa, the program seeks to enhance the response of government agencies to the needs of IDPs and returnees.
Over the last 3 years of implementing these projects, it has become increasingly apparent that the Commission and its partner should bring on board other stakeholders in the protection sector to work together in order to achieve efficient response to humanitarian needs in Nigeria and particularly in the project states.
Both organizations are using the platform to engage and train personnel of government agencies who have the responsibility of providing protection, assistance to affected populations.
The National Human Rights Commission and the UNHCR is going to interface, engage, train you, and perhaps remind you of these very, very important roles that you need to play.
Knowledge is always continuous, and you have been very active in the humanitarian work in the 3 states. As of now in Nigeria, Borno, Yobe and Adamawa, they are the main theater of the insurgency, though at a different stage. We are now talking of the returns, and with the returns there are other problems involved.
Promoting human rights is also a critical aspect of protection assistance. Security personnel at the event acknowledge areas in which they can better protect the rights of such vulnerable people.
Issues that has to do with IDPs' rights being trampled on, IDPs being falling into diverse kind of situation where they will need help, where they will need assistance and things like that, and where you could be able to talk to them and they feel a sort of belonging and part of the community.
The program is a key component of the IDP Returnee Protection Monitoring Commission, covering areas including identifying, measuring and analyzing risks and needs of affected communities, expediting response time and ensuring easy access to newly liberated areas.
Children, particularly girls, are one of the most vulnerable populations in conflict zones. The girl child is prone to many dangers, and as such, adequate provision is required to ensure their protection. Joining us now to talk more about the gaps that exist is Andrew Mamedu. He's the head of Resource Mobilization and Innovation at Action Aid Nigeria. Thank you for joining us today on Africa54.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Now, we know that we've just marked the 4th anniversary of the abduction of Chibok girls. We also did know the situation with the girls from Dapchi, and many praying that they are rescued alive. But then the challenges that girls are exposed to in that region, what do you think should be done to see that safety measures or they're safer in schools?
Yeah, thanks, Chamberlain. First of all, we need to look at the vulnerability of the girl child. The girls in Nigeria, girls globally, are more vulnerable than men. In Nigeria, if you come to Nigeria, and because of our culture, because of our religion, because of our practices, girls are more vulnerable than boys. And if you then go down to northern Nigeria, where these incidents have happened, clearly also, it's also worse off. And as a result of that, from the family, from when the child is born, so there's a preference for male child. So thank God it's a boy. So right from them going to school, they are more vulnerable to attack. Now with the Chibok girls, now with the Dapchi girls, clearly the responses from government has not been commensurate with what has happened. So one would expect that with what has happened with the Chibok girls, Dapchi girls would not occur. Now it has occurred. What would the government need to do? Very simple. We need to increase security within our school system. There are various measures. For instance, we have the Safe School Initiative that was initiated. So where is that program right now? How do we strengthen the Safe School Initiative? We have lots of development partners. Yeah. We have the World Bank, we have the DFI, the USAID. We have organizations, NGOs like ours, Action Aid, that are open and working with the community on one hand, and also with government on the other hand. So clearly, how do you ensure that government plays its coordination role? Government is responsible for coordinating this and ensure that these girls are safe. They go to school at the end of the day. Yeah.
I see you also highlighted the culture and how it affects things, but in those areas, the cultures that seem to perhaps give more preference, as it were, to the male child as opposed to the girl child, what do you suggest be done in those cases to protect the rights of the girl child? Now,
if you look at our, for instance, if you look at our population growth rate, which is about 2.5 to 2.8% currently, of course, you have if you go to northern Nigeria, so you have families that have up to a man that has up to 20 children. While we are trying to deal with the cultural issues, the government has to also have a response for it. So if we have this number of children, we have to make provisions for these girls to go to school.
Do we have to have government policies to come in at any stage?
Now, government policies are always relevant. For instance, a simple policy, for instance, the Child Rights Act is a very good one. So the Child Rights Act, you have 11 states, all of them in northern Nigeria, that have not passed the Child Rights Act. Even those that have passed it, they are not even implementing it. So how will the government ensure that the communities adhere to these policies? How do we ensure that the state government, the local government are in support of these policies and they adhere to it? Now, I know we're in a federation. Some of these issues fall within the concurrent list. Clearly, they fall within the concurrent list, but then we have to hold the state governments accountable to be able to ensure that these things happen. Yeah.
Andrew Mamedu of Action Aid, thank you for joining us today on Africa54.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa54 and the stories we cover. Share the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, as rainy season begins, state authorities across Nigeria prepare for the downpour.